welcome to Africa Say, where do you stay safe? Stop, find out, and every conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest. He's the author of the fourth book, Unleash the Power of Connection. Stuck, frustrated, full of potential, but always falling short. It's not your fault. You were never meant to do this alone. No other than Mr. Dennis Mccurdy. Welcome, Mr. Dennis on Africa. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Daniel, thanks for having me on your show. Where do I start? I just consider myself a small town boy who decided at one point in time that if somebody else could do it, so could I.
Yes,
And I think that's one of the things, one of the dangers I think in life while we're just prefacing this is that we see people who are already successful and we forget that they all started somewhere. And if we get it stuck in that mentality, then oftentimes we don't do anything. We just say, I can't do that, but we're comparing ourselves to the wrong level. Instead of comparing ourselves as a beginner, we're comparing ourselves to somebody who's already gone through the process, maybe 10 or 20 years even. So I barely made out of high school, went in the military, came out and did one semester of college, and then started in the real estate business. And I know that the other day you had Julie. What was Julie's name? She was on just the other day.
Mm-hmm.
She was a realtor. She was on your program. So,
oh, thank you.
Yeah, I started as a realtor.
So, Mr. Dennis, the core idea is that connection fuels achievement. Why is the social container like accountability, partnership fundamentally more effective for most people than relying on solo willpower or self help tools?
I think willpower is overrated, and people look for that too much rather than developing systems. But one of the most important things is I always tell people we'll let ourselves down, but before we'll let someone else down. And so having a goal buddy, an accountability partner, mastermind group, even a coach is really important because that builds in that accountability. That's that whole premise of we're never meant to do it alone. Because again, we'll never, ever, ever let the other person down.
You frame this as unleashing power. What is about sharing our goals with a committed peer that unlocks something in us that intention alone cannot?
Well, that power of, again, back to the power of having another person. So let me give you an example. Many years ago, I was in a supposed to be a mastermind group and end up just being two people as what we call goal buddies or accountability partners. And we actually met every month for 7 years. And in the beginning of our process, we decided to add a penalty rather to someone who didn't achieve their goals. So every month when we met, we wrote down our goals, made our commitment for the next month. We set the date for the next meeting, and then we wrote a check to each other, post-dated 30 days to the next meeting for $500. And if you didn't do your goals, the other person got to cash the check.
Nice.
Yeah, and it works. But the point of it is that the other part of the point is that even if the money wasn't involved after a point in time, I would never let my Margot, my partner, down by not doing my goals, and she would never let me down. So it's not only letting yourself down, you won't let the other person down. And again, that's that human connection. We're so connected And we forget about that sometimes, and we need to unleash that or harness that power.
Yes, unleash that power within people and stop procrastinating.
Right.
The book covers both on one partnership and mastermind groups. At the
Yes.
foundational level, what is the key psychological difference in how each one works on our behavior and mindset?
There really isn't much difference. Um, I ran a mastermind group for about 10 years. And again, it's a basic same principle. You get together at least once a month, sometimes more often. And it's just a matter of having more people involved rather than just a one on one, say, accountability partner. But the advantage of sometimes the group is you might get more input because everybody hears or sees something different and they're able to give you better input and keep you more accountable. And it's just somebody can more people you can bounce ideas off of. The power of numbers. Now, when I say having a group, I mean it shouldn't be too large. It should, I think personally, 4 to maximum 7 people is an ideal group. Any more than that, and I think you lose a lot. So because you want to keep it intimate and you want to allow enough time for everyone to participate in each meeting or each time you get together.
And let's talk about the procrastination, Mr. Dennis. How does the simple act of knowing you all have to report to someone next Tuesday short circuit the advance cycle in our brain?
It sure does because again it goes back to that same concept always that when you know you have to have something for someone else, you're going to get that done. And I was in my partnership with Margot, my Chevers. That was the person who was my goal buddy for all those years. Sometimes it would be, now I did procrastinate a little bit sometimes because sometimes it'd be like 10 minutes before we got the meeting that I would say, get the final thing done, but I still got it done. And having that added pressure is really important. One of the things I always like to say is I don't like to be pushed, but I like the results.
Yes, I like the results too, Mr. Dennis. Beyond just checking in, what are the specific active techniques that make accountability conversation transformative rather than just a guilt inducing status update?
I think that as you go along, you develop these intimate relationships, and I mean, maybe there's a little bit of guilt involved, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that when we're part of a team, that becomes a part of who we are and becomes part of our overall makeup. And so, it's just like when I was in a war many years ago, and it wasn't about God and country; it was about your buddies. You would never let your buddies down because they were the most important thing in the world to you. And so the same concept applies to any group, whether it be you want to call it a study group, a mastermind group, any kind of relationship like that, even a small team in a company. You depend on each other, and that becomes more like responsibility than guilt. If that makes sense.
Makes sense, yes, responsibility versus guilt. And there's a vulnerability in sharing unfinished work and raw struggles. How does
Yes.
creating spaces of psychological safety within this partnership actually accelerate progress more than a purely tough love approach?
Well, again, it goes back to as you coalesce as a group, whether it's with a one-on-one person or with an actual mastermind group. Again, you said it, you develop that intimacy, and that intimacy, that strong relationship helps move you forward. It can also help you with your confidence because you don't feel like you're alone. And that's really important because sometimes everybody gets scared, everybody gets nervous, everybody has doubts and fears, but having a sense that you have a team, that you're not doing it alone, can be very, very important.
Very, very important indeed. And for someone looking start or join a mastermind group, what are the red flags or a dysfunctional group and a green flags of a highly functional one?
Well, obviously, the red flags on a group would be people not living up to their expectations or their commitments, their goals. Also, maybe not showing up to meetings. So, example, when Margot and I were starting our mastermind group, which ended up just being the two of us, other people wanted to come to the group. So they would come, and then all of a sudden they would come once, maybe they'd come twice, and then they were too busy. Well, we were never too busy. We never missed any meetings. So how come they're not? So that lack of commitment. If one of the biggest things for a mastermind group is that people have to be committed. And when I ran my group, if you would miss like 3 meetings in a year without a really good reason, like being in the hospital or something, then we would probably consider removing you from the group because it really hurts the cohesiveness of the group. So on the other side, on the green side, you want people to show up. You want people to keep their commitments. You want people to share information and share about themselves, and also encourage and hold accountable the other people. I always like to say you want to surround yourself with people who will give you that loving kick in the butt.
Kick in the butt. Yes. So, how do you navigate the delicate balance in these relationships between supportive empathy and challenging accountability?
I think it just eventually flows naturally, and as people get more intimate, just like say family members, that your people are more willing to, number one, put themselves out there, but also more willing to realize that if I don't call you on your stuff, I don't, then you're not going to call me on mine, and then you don't have a group really. You don't have any. There's no point. So you really have to develop that trust that you will call them out and they will call you out in a nice way, obviously, but to keep you moving forward and not accept excuses.
Indeed, Mr. Dennis, and overcoming challenges and pitfalls. What happens when the partnership becomes unbalanced? When one person is consistently prepared and progressing and otherwise is not? How do you address the dynamic without resentment?
Well, I think one of my suggestions is that when or before you start anything, that you have a clear set of rules and boundaries, and everybody agrees to them, acknowledges that, and and that's your guiding light, and you have to stick by that because if you don't, the whole group will just fall apart. So, um, one of the reasons I ended my last mastermind group after 10 years of doing it is people were not committing to goals, or they weren't really looking at things that were moving them forward, or they weren't showing up often enough. And I said, if you're not going to be committed, then we're going to end the group, which I did. Um, and sometimes maybe that's a good thing. If it stops being productive, then I think you need to move on and find another way or find another group.
Yes, move on and let it go, people. Let it go. And Mr. Dennis, common fear is being judged. How do we guide people to move from mindset, I will be seen as a future or I will be seen as a failure, to this is a laboratory for my growth?
Yeah, well, it is, the thing is, part of it, I think, is like understanding and accepting that every time you fail or make a mistake or have a glitch, it's supposed to be a stepping stone and not the end of the world. I mean, every time you do something, I even tell my staff, every time you get a question wrong on a test or something, that means you're probably going to be smarter on that question the next time. You learn, and it's all about having a learning process that that helps you grow. And if you're not making, the old saying, if you're not making mistakes, you're not growing. And so failure should always be seen as feedback and not failure per se.
Yes, definitely. And Mr. Dennis, how do these groups handle confidentiality and intellectual property, especially for
Well, yeah,
entrepreneurs
you
shaping or sharing business ideas? What guidelines are essential?
again, it goes back to your very beginning of your agreement with the group and your rules that you set up, which are very important. And that safety for this kind of a group is absolutely crucial because depending on the type of group, it's just there could be some pretty personal things that come out. Now, one of the things I always say, and I say in my book, is you probably don't want to have a group with people in your same industry or sometimes maybe even your same company, because those can create problems, especially when you talked about the safety of new ideas and things like that. So I encourage people to have a diversified group, and again, not necessarily all in the same industry or not competitors, direct competitors, but people that bring something different to the table, but are not going to be tempted to abscond with your ideas.
Yes, definitely. And Mr. Dennis, you mentioned developing a better habits. How does external connection facilitate the internal identity shift from someone who should do this to someone who do this?
Well, again, always goes back to the accountability. And as far as habits go, I mean, one of the things, at least I talk about in the book, particularly, is that oftentimes when people start a new habit, they try to make them too big. They try to do too much. You know the old saying that of the people who do set New Year's resolutions, only about 6% of them actually take any action. And so, oftentimes, because the actions they talk about or try to set as goals are too big, and if they're too big, then it's too easy to get overwhelmed. When you're creating any kind of new habit, you really want to start so small that you can't fail, and so small that you don't have any excuses. So sometimes I'll tell somebody, just start something, just do it for 2 minutes if you're going to start a new habit, or do two push ups, do two of whatever, walk 2 minutes. But it starts to build that habit muscle. And that's really what's important because habits, as you know, pretty much run our lives.
Yes, habits for sure. In a long term, how does participating in a mastermind group not just help achieve goals, but actually expand your vision for what's possible for your life or business?
Well, I think that, when you're listening to other people, uh, what they're accomplishing or what they're trying to accomplish, it can be inspiring. And that old saying, sometimes people will see things in you that you don't see in yourself, or they'll see things that you don't really admit to yourself, and it can be encouraging for you. So that can help expand your vision, because a lot of times people get stuck or settle in certain ranges because they have beliefs about that. But when you are surrounding yourself with other people who have different visions and see different visions even for you, that can help you expand your vision. And I think most people think too small as it is, as you well know. And so that's really important. And it really is an inspiring thing.
Inspiring for sure. And Mr. Dennis, can this model work for deeply personal, non professional goals? Or is it best suited for career or entrepreneurial aims?
It can be used for anybody or anything where you want to grow. So whether it be your personal life, I was actually in a men's group for probably 10 years where it was a group of men that wanted to just have uh, develop personal relationships with men that weren't about sports or anything else, but more about talking about their personal issues, those type of things, and getting feedback and growing. Because again, we all think a certain way, and getting feedback from somebody who thinks a different way can have a major effect on you because you can look at things from a different angle.
Yes, in different angle. For listeners who is convinced but introverted or hesitant, what is the absolute smallest, lowest stake step to take to experience this power of connection?
That's a tough one. Well, I don't know if it has to do with introvert. I think more it has to do with, you know, like just basic fear. The fear of putting yourself out there, the fear of failing or looking bad in front of somebody else. That that actually is the same principle that ties into the power of the group, is that having that accountability. So it's just start small. Give it. I mean, you've got to take that leap of faith, I think, and just go. I mean, there's no easy way to kind of tiptoe into it, I don't think.
Yes, there's certainly. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, Mr. Dennis, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, a comedy 101 in third season,
Nice.
Yes, food 101 in sixth season, geography 101, love letters, movie 101 review, music 101 in its fourth season, science 101, sex 101 in its second season, Emma Baby Podcast, mental health 101, law 101, and Bible verses 101. And of course, my entrepreneurship 101 just launched yesterday. So please listen to
Wow.
them wherever you listen your podcasts.
Nice,
Uh,
Daniel. You're a busy man.
yes, indeed. And thank you for being part, Mr. Dennis, for being part of my busyness. Finally, what is the most surprising or counterintuitive insight about human achievement that writing this book revealed to you?
I think it just basically reinforces the importance of habits, reinforces the importance of setting achievable goals. So, for example, when I first started writing this particular book, I was writing 400 words a day. And as I progressed, I realized it would probably be too much. So I went down to 200 words a day. And then I went down to 15 minutes a day. But the whole point is it got done. And if I had tried to continue with the original pace, it probably wouldn't have got done. So I think learning how to develop consistency and persistency is probably the magic of everything.
Yes, indeed. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Dennis. Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you,
Thank you
Daniel.
so much. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your Unleash the Power of Connection?
Yes.
So, where do people buy your book, Mr. Dennis?
It's available primarily on Amazon.com or on Smashwords, which is digital chalk.
Yes. People, let's support Mr. Dennis Mccurdy, because if you support him for sure, you will unleash the power of connection.
Yes, they will.
They will. And Mr. Dennis, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel.
Modica people, see you soon.